In this tutorial, we will learn how to get parameters from elements in Revit and how to export them into an Excel spreadsheet. Let's start opening the sample architectural model Snowden Towers and go to the L1 floor plan. I am using the metric system. This level contains 14 rooms, each of them with a unique number. The parameters that we want to access from Dynamo are the room numbers and the area. Now let's launch Dynamo from the Manage tab. On the left side of this window, there are two drop-down menus. The first menu is for opening existing files or templates. The second menu lets you create either a new workspace, which is a new script, or a custom node, which we'll explore later, but essentially it's a collection of nodes bundled together for easy reuse. Let's start with a new workspace. The main window is the workspace where we will start combining multiple nodes into the main scripts. We can switch from the node view to the geometry preview by clicking on these buttons in the top right corner. We can navigate the geometry preview using the right mouse button to rotate the camera, the middle button to pan, and the scroll button to zoom in and out. This is the same for the node view, except the rotation, which is not allowed. Unless we are dealing with nodes that interacts with some geometry element, point, lines, surfaces, etc. The background preview will remain empty. We can also turn it off from View Background Preview. And we can do the same for the Revit preview. We can export a screenshot of the workspace by clicking on Export as Image on the top right corner. In the bottom left corner there is the execution bar, which has 3 different options: manual, automatic, and periodic. It's usually better to select the manual execution, which means that the code will run only when you press the Run button. By keeping it in manual model, you can prevent unexpected crashes. We can set the default run settings from the menu bar, Dynamo Preferences. On the left of the workspace, we have the node library in which all the nodes are organized: input, list, Revit, etc., by their category and subcategory. Each subcategory nodes there is a symbol that indicates whether the node creates data, +sign, executes an action, Thunderbolt, or query data, ? At the top of the library, there is a search bar. Search can also be performed by right-click anywhere in the workspace. So if you open the subcategory U and you click on an item, this node will appear in the workspace window. You can move the node by holding the left button on the node. Each node has an input on the left and an output on the right. Inside the node is stored the function. So in this case, this node creates a family by using the name provided as input. After running the script, we can visualize the output of each node by hovering the mouse on the bottom right corner. Wait for the output panel to appear, and then pin it. If you right-click on node, you can delete it. You can create a group. When you create a group and you right-click outside the node, you can change the color, you can set the font size, and if you double-click, you can edit the title and the description. Freezing the node means Dynamo won't execute the node and all its dependent. We will learn about lacing later. You can remove it from the group, you can switch on or off the geometry preview, and you can access a little help file which includes a brief description of what this node does, and more important, it tells you what are the inputs that this node reads and what data type it needs and what sort of output it returns. As a beginner, it's good practice to start with your end goal and work backwards when creating the graph. In this training, we want to write some data into an Excel file. So if you type right into the search toolbar at the top of the library, you will see a list of nodes. The one we will use is called Export to Excel. Currently, this node returns null since we haven't provided any of the required inputs shown on the left side. Let's start with file path. If you just type the name of the input into the search toolbar, and if the node exists, like in this case, you can click on it to bring it to the workspace. But wait, there are 2 nodes called file path. Which one do we need? Since we are working with import-export actions, the node is the third one from the top as suggested by the Thunderbolt. The first node instead is a query node, see the ? And returns the current Revit document file path. By clicking on the Browse button in the middle of the node, we can select or create a new Excel file. To create a new file, simply write the name of the file followed by .xlsx. Then connect the output of the file path node with the file path input of the Export to Excel node by clicking once with the left button onto the output arrow and once again on the name of the other node input. If you click again on the name of the input, the wire gets disconnected. If you click anywhere, it just disappears, and you can bring it back with a left click. Next, if we search for sheet name, we don't get what we want, because this sheet name, as you can see here, is querying the name of a Revit sheet. What we need is the name of the worksheet to write the data to, and if you hover your mouse on the name of the input, you will notice a pop-up dialog that says string. String is the expected data type of this input, and the content can be anything we want. If you type string in the search, the input action string node appears first in the list. After clicking it, we can write the name of the worksheet that will appear in Excel in the input box and connect it to the sheet name input. Start row is where we want to start writing our data, and the data type is in which stands for integer or number. Again, if you type integer, you don't find the node that we need, but if you type number, then you get the correct node. You can also display all the input data type nodes by navigating to Input and then Basic. I want to place our data in the first row, which is 0 if you start counting from 0, as Dynamo does. And if we want column A, then we need to have 0 as the start column. Let's leave data empty for a moment. Overwrite is a Boolean, and it has a default value of false, which means we can leave it as it is, and the script will run anyway. Boolean is a particular data type that can only have two status, true or false. In this case, we want to overwrite everything in the Excel worksheet, so we pick the Boolean input and set it to true. Write as string is another Boolean, and this time we will leave it empty since it has a default value of false. Let's now get the data. Let's repeat the same logic to get the room number and area from a room. Let's try using the search bar. We want to get a parameter from a Revit element. So let's start typing get parameter. And in this case, we are lucky the first node is exactly what we need. This node needs two inputs, the element and the parameter name. All the methods related to selecting Revit elements are stored under Revit selection. The easiest way, but also the most time-consuming, is to use Select Model Element, which basically allows you to pick the element from the Revit user interface. So if you click on Select and go back to any Revit view, you can select any visible element. After we click on a room, the yellow warning sign disappears, and at the bottom, there is a text note showing the Revit element ID of the element selected. If you don't trust Dynamo, you can go to Manage, select by ID, and if you type the number and press OK, the element gets highlighted. If you run the script, the selected element category, and again the element ID will be displayed in the output window. If you click on the green area of the element ID, Revit will try to zoom to that element. The other input is parameter name. As the name suggests, the data type is a string. We can type string in the search bar or copy and paste the string node we used before and in the input box type number. We can then connect it to the input and run the script. The selected room number will appear in the output dialog. If we connect the output of get parameter value by name to the data input and press run, it will export the number of the room into Excel into the first row and first column. In order to export the area of this room, we can select the string node and get parameter node, do a Control-C and Control-V, change the string to area, and connect the output to data, and when we run it now in cell A1, we get the area of our room. Dynamo doesn't allow you to have two wires into a single input, so in order to export both number and area at the same time, we need to combine these two values into list first. If you search for list, create this node allows you to combine more items into a list. Simply click on the plus symbol to add a new input. If you want to remove an input, click on the minus symbol. Connect the output of list create to our data input in the Excel node. If we run the script, you can see that both number and area have been exported. When you create a list, Dynamo gives automatically an index to each item. In this way, you can always get an item from a list by using a node called getItemAtIndex. The index is the number is in front of the items. The index is always an integer. We can use an integer slider to quickly select multiple numbers. If we type 0 and we run the script, we will get the first item in the list. If we type 1, we get the second item, and if we type 2, we don't get anything because the index is out of range, which means that this list has two items and this node cannot find anything it indexed to, so you get an error. When the node returns an error, a yellow strip and a warning symbol appear. If you hover the mouse on the warning sign, there is a pop-up note that tries to explain what went wrong and how to fix it. So let's try to combine the two strings that we have here in a single list, so we can remove one of these two element getParameter nodes. We can combine our number and area strings into one list and connect it to parameter name. If we run this code, we can see that both the room number and the area are showing as output. This is a quicker and more efficient way than the one we had before. Let's now export the number and the area of all the rooms in this view. To do so, we need to replace Select Model Element with Select Model Elements. This node, as the name suggests, allows you to select multiple elements in Revit. So let's first isolate the rooms that we want to select. Then let's go back to Dynamo and click Select, go back to Revit, draw a window, and now you see what we have from this node is a list of the elements we selected. Before running the code, try to visualize what it will return. In this case, we are expecting a list of lists. A list of two values, the room number and then the area that repeats for each room. But if we run the script and check the output, what we get is the number of the first room and the area of the second room, and nothing else. This is caused by something called lacing. Lacing controls the list operations, and it has three options plus an auto mode. Lacing can be accessed by right-click on the node or from the bottom right corner. The auto mode is the same as shortest option. The shortest option combines the first item of a list with the first item of the second list, the second item with the second item, until one of the list runs out of items. So if the two lists don't have the same length, which means they don't contain the same number of items, some of the items will be left out from this operation. Longest list will match the first item with the first item, the second item with the second item, and then it will keep matching the second item of the first list with all the items of the second list. If we set it on our getParameter value, we get the number of the first room, and then the area of the second room, and the area of the third, the fourth, and all the other rooms. If we swap number and area, we get the area of the first room and the number of all the other rooms. The last option, the one that we need and we will use, is the cross product, which allows you to obtain both number and area from each room. If we connect the output to the Excel node data input, we will see our list of rooms number and areas in Excel. If we want to extract an additional parameter, we can simply create another string node with the parameter name and add it to the list create node. If we want to tidy up the export to Excel, we can add column headers. These are the parameter names values that we already have, and we need to add at the top of our getParameter value output list. To do so, we can use a node called list_add_item to front. The item is our list of parameter names, and the list is the getParameter value output list. If we connect that to the Excel data input, we will see our column headers in Excel. In lesson number 2, we will see how to import data from Excel and write it back into Revit element parameters.